Okay, this hair is utterly out of control. And I know Chris cuts his own hair. I never thought it would come to this.
So you understand, I cut my own hair, but I do it naked in the bathtub. I've never cut anybody else's hair.
You sounded really confident on the phone. I think you need to cut a hole in this.
No, for what possible reason would I want to cut a hole in this? Oh.
What?
No, totally intentional. You're joining the armed forces, right?
No!
I mean, you know, like, no one's...
No, I don't know. What?
Yeah, let's just leave it at that.
I thought there'd be a joke here or something, but he just did a really good job. Time to go interview Levi.
Welcome back, DP Review TV viewers. It's Jordan Drake here with my good friend, Levi Holwell. Hi, Levi.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Levi was the director of A Walk Down to Water, a movie that we both worked on about 2 years ago at this point.
So this is our short film about an immigrant employee at a rural motel who discovers that a guest has passed away in one of the rooms. It kind of sounds ominous, but it's actually a really beautiful study of a situation where indifference is just everywhere, and some much needed empathy is really scarce.
It's online premiere right now. It's available, so go watch it. It is available through Film Shortage. The link will be in the description below. If you go check out the film, hopefully you enjoy it, but come back here. We're going to be talking about all of the decisions we made as collaborators on this project. We're in a very appropriate setting for this conversation today. We're in the Globe Cinema here in Calgary, which is our favorite independent theater here in town, and it's a very apropos setting for us to dive into a bit. Yeah.
Okay, so there's 4 things I really wanted to talk about, and obviously the first of these is I want to talk about cameras.
Is lenses. Lenses?
You're the director. I will defer to you
Well,
again.
it doesn't
It'll
have
just be
to
like
be
we're
my
back
decision.
on set.
Like,
okay.
no, it's like I'm collaborative. I'm very democratic about this. We're going to talk about lenses.
So you and I talked a lot in pre-production about the lenses that we were going to use. What did we eventually wind up settling on?
We went with the Sony Cine lenses, PL mount for a large portion of the film.
Yeah, most of the movie was shot on that. It was kind of our A setup. We had anywhere from 20 to 135 millimeters, all primes.
We stayed a lot in that 35 to 50 mil range as well. We talked about those focal lengths being used a lot. But they have a very clinical quality, the Sony lenses, and so we use those almost entirely at the motel.
Right, to kind of emphasize that it was mundane, just not to draw attention to the lenses.
Exactly, yeah. And then for the part of the film that I shot in Denmark, we did a lot of tests and ended up going with some vintage Nikkor lenses that actually Chris Nichols owned and lended to me. Yeah.
And the weird thing with those, the Cine are consistent across the range, where the Nikons, like the wides, have this very distinctive vignette to it. Yeah. I know his 51.4 is, I mean, optically
horrible. One of my favorite shots in the film is on the 50 mm 1.4 Nikkor lens, and it's just really soft, but it's hard to tell where the focus is, but it's shot wide open, and just, again, the flaws in the optics create the kind of this really beautiful image if that's what you're looking for. And we wanted everything in Denmark to kind of feel almost more like memory-like.
Yeah, like a little bit nostalgic. Yeah, and it's amazing how effective those lenses were for that.
Yeah.
And then we also used those in the hotel room because we wanted it to feel, you know, this is something completely out of ordinary for our lead actor, Boban.
Absolutely.
So we wanted it to feel very different.
Yes.
And it absolutely did that.
Yeah, exactly. That's just the one kind of emotional thematic bridge between the stark motel stuff and the dreamy Denmark stuff is inside that room. There's a bit of a emotional connection there, and so we switched the lenses up and used the Nikkors at the motel there. And with some of the Denmark stuff, we took it one step further, and we were talking a lot about Todd Hito and his photography, shooting through windshields, having raindrops in front of the lens and stuff like that. And so I actually put a piece of glass in front of the vintage Nikkor lenses and shot a lot of the stuff in Denmark that way.
Right, and just by changing the angle of the glass, we ran a ton of experiments with this, and we found like glycerin looks really, really unique when you just put a little bit of that on the lens.
Yeah, I wanted, again, in the same way that the lenses weren't optically perfect, I wanted other imperfection. I absolutely love how kind of what we
It's so funny because everything we did was to technically flaw the image more, but it wound up being a lot of my favorite images from the movie.
Yeah, you know, these technical decisions are influenced by the storytelling. It's not just, ooh, what's the optically best piece of glass to use?
Exactly.
But now we'll move on to the natural
Well, I mean,
next
it's
choice.
for DP review, so obviously we have to talk about the cameras.
Yes.
Levi, what cameras did we shoot the film on?
Thank you for asking, Jordan. So first off, we shot everything at the motel on the Red Weapon. which was the best camera that we had available to us, and we knew that we were going to rely on some of its great features for some important reasons.
We really, like the compressed raw on that, we knew we were shooting a good chunk of the movie, like bright overhead, contrasty light, and that dynamic range. Just to know we could capture everything that we needed, and we still wanted it to look harsh and things, but we could save shadows, we could save highlights if we needed it. When Bobin walks into a dark hotel room, to have a little information in the highlights and a little bit in the shadows, where a lot of other cameras it would just be black and white.
Absolutely.
And not the good type of black and white.
No. When we talk about all of the stuff in the parking lot, we wanted harsh, high noon light for storytelling purposes, you know? So it was going to be setting up a camera in unforgiving circumstances. There's so much information there, and it's really taking a tough scenario, and that image is helping us navigate that in a way that other cameras that we tested just wouldn't have been able to handle as well. But we did definitely deal with some drawbacks with the red.
It slowed us down so much. You know, we're fighting, it's a hot day. We've got fan noise we're dealing with. We had overheating. Batteries are going constantly on it. So we have been battling. We were hoping to use a bigger battery system, but we're using red volts, so we're getting like 35 minutes to a battery. So it seems like you set up a shot and the battery's dead before you're ready to roll. But we're making do. It was a constant struggle. It's so heavy. We did quite a bit of handheld stuff. With kids, when you're crouched down, it's incredibly painful. But then the whole time it's like, you know, it's going to be worth it. Once we get into the grade, having that extra information is going to make a difference.
You know, when Bobin's on the phone in his office, the fan noise was just so loud.
It's a quiet
and
scene.
It was, you know, creating issues with the audio in post, trying to pull out that fan noise.
But then we knew going into this movie, we couldn't have a giant red kit and PLs because you were shooting a chunk of it in Denmark, you know, traveling with carry-on, so it wasn't going to be an option. So again, we did a bunch of camera tests, and we eventually settled on the Panasonic GH5S. Would be our Denmark camera. And I mean, it costs, I think, like a 20th what the red does. And I don't think anybody watching the film is going to be like, they just cut to the cheap camera there, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I was there for a month, just myself, so yeah, we had, you know, definitely to go with a smaller, lighter camera, but there were so many pros to what the GH5S offered. You know, I'm shooting so much footage, you know, hours and hours every day. I'm just shooting
cheap
nature.
SD cards.
So I'm just shooting the SD cards, and it's a manageable amount of data. The battery life is incredible, and it's a super lightweight. But the GH5S, yes, it was, you know, in much more forgiving light. We're in beautiful overcast, you know, twilight, golden hour type stuff. So that helped out, but the image just held up phenomenally well, and I was so thrilled about what the GH5S brought to this project.
It's still, years later, one of my favorite mirrorless images. Levi, I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. You know, I pretend to be all obsessed with cameras and lenses like that, but all I really give a about is lighting.
Okay, well, that's quite the admission to make from someone who's a cinematographer, but I will say lighting's very important, and so we can talk about that.
You really wanted this high noon look, and that set up a whole bunch of challenges for me. So we gave ourselves a few rules. When we're outside, we could use negative fill, we could bring in some floppies, we could bounce some light, and we could use a little bit of diffusion. But there were a lot of wides, so that wasn't an option a lot of the time. Why did we do that, Levi? It doesn't really look great on my reel.
Right, yeah, it was very daunting and a big challenge for you, I admit. For all of us, it was a huge challenge to say, hey, we're going to pick very unforgiving, almost ugly light and try to make that work for large portions of our film. And yeah, that was a really big decision for us. I made it really early on when I was writing the script. I knew I wanted to go in that direction and at least try to pull it off or make it work. I wanted it to feel like a motel in Olds, Alberta at noon. You know, I didn't want it to look beautiful in that sense. I wanted it to feel indifferent and unspectacular and still at the same time walk that line and us do our job a little bit to make it feel, you know, full of intention and everything. So that was why we kind of gave ourselves those challenges, was to try to serve the story, but it's all within context, you know, because then the payoff when you switch to that first shot in Denmark, I think you really see why we made the decisions we did.
Absolutely.
But I think, you know, the beginning of the film, you know, the film opens up with a very kind of abstract shot.
And we talked about that. So I think that was the shot that we tested the most going into it. Right. And Noah Follis actually helped us out a lot of like bouncing light off a mirror. And then we had a whole bunch of those flops, and we had Alyssa, one of our grips, laying on the floor, moving a flop down slowly to reveal the sunbeam. It seemed like it would be the easiest shot in the movie, but...
you know, I think for whatever reason, that's definitely an image that I think, you know, it's the opening, first thing you see, so it
We
really
wanted
sets
that, yeah.
but it was,
And it had to be good.
Okay, so the last thing that we're going to talk about, probably the biggest decision you can make as a director and cinematographer on a film, is that around camera movement.
Right.
You know, you can
Did
say
we-
so much emotively.
Did we move the camera?
No, not really. But I mean, we were very subtle about it.
The
That's
camera
thing. Camera
language.
language, perhaps, is a better way to put it. I mean, Robert Bresson once said that it's a gentle whisper in the breeze. I think there is this idea out there that, and that like production value and dynamic camera movement go hand in hand. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm against camera movement of some kind. It's just tailoring the decisions for the narrative.
Well, like your last short film, Metanoia, that I also worked on, had tons of camera movement
Yeah, and
constantly.
now I think-
But with this story, you know, I think that decision made a ton of sense.
Yeah.
You know, it is primarily locked off pans and tilts on a tripod.
Yeah.
But also, when the camera was moving, I remember you dropped off a copy of The Secret Life of Veronique.
No, the double life of
Double
Veronique.
Life. So-
Honestly, the one time at the motel that we couldn't get out of basically avoiding not moving the camera was when Boban has to walk across the parking lot to initiate a conversation with the mother character. And I just wanted a little bit of organic bounce. And yeah, there's a reference in the Double Life of Veronique that has that kind of bounce steady cam to it in kind of sync with the character's movement.
Yes.
So we were trying to replicate that, and we had this elaborate setup with bungee cords, but I didn't want that perfect gimbal movement. But, you know, early on, again, trying to understand what type of film I'm trying to make, what type of story we're all trying to tell, I wanted it to have a quality of stillness, and I think that when you move the camera, you're maybe adding tension on a dynamic push and whatever. And I really didn't want bias in our camera language, and so just having the camera sit still on a tripod is forcing people to look at something without us saying, hey, feel this way.
Well, yeah, we were both watching Ozu and Tarkovsky and stuff like that, and I think we both came at it the same way. The other time there's a ton of camera movement is, again, when we go to Denmark, where it feels very different, but once again, it does not look like a modern, you know, gimbal or slider or something like that. You busted out.
The
Old
Glidecam
Faithful.
HD 2000, which I bought off of you when I was in high school, and it still works really well. Yeah, I mean, it works perfectly, but it's funny, even in the way that sequence is edited, is when we first cut to the Denmark stuff, it's still tripod.
Yeah.
And then when we first see the ocean, which, wink, wink, the film's called A Walk Down to Water, when we see that,
water's important.
we move the camera kind of for the first time, and now it goes to these slow glide cams. And so then we add in this movement as we're kind of reaching an emotional or narrative point of some kind. So we're trying to save the power of a camera movement for when it can be paid off, you know, and that's just the way that this film's constructed. You know, I remember having like a bit of a crisis a week after we shot this. I went and saw Mission Impossible Fallout, and I was like, what have we done? We've made a terrible, boring movie. Like, I was absolutely terrified about it because I knew that we didn't do anything flashy, but we were trying to have a film that had stillness, and it kind of is asking the audience to come to a little bit as well.
So thanks for coming in and talking with me about the film.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, most importantly, thank you for the opportunity to work on it. I mean, that was definitely one of the best creative experiences that I've ever had. I love how the movie turned out. And I mean, everybody that I worked with, the cast, everyone involved was just a pleasure to work with.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone was so amazing other than Barad. But no, I truly have so much gratitude and love for all of the people who helped us make this film. It takes a lot of people. So thank you to you as well for all of your hard work on it. All right, so hopefully you found that conversation about the film insightful. If you've checked out the film, thank you so much for doing so. That means a lot. If you haven't yet, the link is in the description. We put a lot of time into this film, and so every eye that checks it out means a lot to me. The other thing I really want to call some attention to is please consider donating to your local independent cinema to try to support them during this time. Buy a gift card to help them get through it. If you're in America, there's actually the Art House America campaign that the Criterion Collection is helping organize. It's just an amazing initiative to help keep some cinemas alive. And as movie lovers, I think we all want to see that work out.
Thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget, check out myself, Chris, Levi, and Levi's production company. All of our socials are right below there as well. Check out dpreview.com. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all again very soon. And for now, the balcony is closed. I always wanted to say that. I mean, obviously my favorite of the three colors is red.
Yeah, I'm really more of a blue person myself.
Well, okay, so like blue really gets you in a mood
I think
very
it's more
effectively.
emotional.
It is, but it's one emotion.
Juliet
where,
Binoche is
red
better, I'd say. Like,
Better than okay.
I mean,
all right.
like if you're gonna
I
talk
would-
about Irina
but
Jacobs, I think it's her
Irene
name.
Jacobs is-
She's even better in Double Life of Veronique. You're picking the wrong Kieslowski.
Well, you asked the best of the Three Colors trilogy, so I'm not going to throw another Kieslowski
Right, but
film
it's
into the
just
mix.
more of a.
Oh, I think the Decalogue is my favorite of the Three Colors.